Welcome to the Voices of Impact podcast, where we engage in spirited discourse on the world's most pressing issues with the goal to discover and implement solutions. We are an ambitious youth group, and we will not settle until we have tackled every challenge our world faces.
Previous generations have left us with a host of issues, but the world is ours. Join us as we learn life lessons and how to contribute to a more fair and uplifting planet. We will take the torch from older generations, learning from their mistakes.
We will glean wisdom from the experiences of adults who tried to prevent us from ending up with the issues that we face today, as well as the experiences of adults who, to this day, stand alongside us, fighting the southward progression of many spiraling dilemmas.
Tune in weekly as we approach these many quadrants through the lens of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, for the planet. Voices of Impact is brought to you by the University of San Diego's Jacobs Institute for Innovation and Education, PPC Profit Pros, and SchoolCAST, a Cloudcast Media program to empower the voices of young students around the world.
Hello everyone, we're back with another episode. Today's episode is all about peace, justice, and strong institutions, which was ranked number 10 by our World Council of Youth, a committee of global youth contributors. This is one of the United Nations, or UN's, 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, 12 of which we will discuss in Season 1 as selected by our World Council of Youth.
As with every episode of Voices of Impact, we are joined by an expert with whom we will discuss peace, justice, and strong institutions, ideas for solutions, and innovative work taking place in other countries. I'm Shane.
I'm Amulya.
I'm Isabella, and this is Voices of Impact.
Greetings, team. Here we are on air again since our previous episode, in episode 9. We had an informative conversation on gender equality.
It's great to be back.
Yes. And I would say that we made an impact by discussing eradicating extreme poverty, equal access to resources, and resilience to disasters. Definitely check it out if you haven't already.
In preparing for today's episode, we've done quite a bit of thinking and research to prepare for our discussion today, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Joining us today is Dr. Andrea Briseño, who is faculty research at Virginia Tech. She has a Ph.D. in public administration and public affairs.
What do you think of peace, justice, and strong institutions?
From Colombia, right? I come from a country with a long history, right, of a lot of violence and a lot of conflict and a lot of terrorist groups, etc. And I can say that really, peace, of course, matters to achieve, right, social justice and to achieve like a minimal right of life well-being. And I will say that really peace is about agreement, about different social groups in a society. I think that, we are a very diverse world, right? We live, overall in a very diverse society with people from different backgrounds, right? People from different perspectives, or religions, social status, etc. And of course, because of that, we are going to have any kind of conflict, not always. And of course, because of all this inequity, right, and social injustice, it is going to create conflict, in any society. So I think that the only way to achieve peace is really to be able to create, right, spaces to have like an open conversation from social groups, right, from different or from very diverse perspectives, and to make an agreement. And I think that it is what happened in Colombia, for instance, and it is what happened in several countries in the world, right, that you really need to put on the table, right, all the kind of disagreements, right, or any kind of difference that you have, and just make an agreement.
First of all, Dr. Briseño, it's great to have you here with us, and I'm really happy to have you on the show. And I wanted to get into your work because you work at the Virginia Tech Institute for Policy and Governance, and you try to bridge the gaps between like the ground roots what's happening with actual people, and then also governmental policy and making sure that that serves the people. You focused on immigration and improving immigration policies, and I think that that may tie into what you were saying about socioeconomic tensions and how that relates to immigration. But I'd love to hear from you, since immigration is a big part of your work. How does that play into peace, justice, and creating strong institutions?
Well, I think that the immigration is a social phenomenon, right, across the world. I mean, immigration. I mean, every country like experiences some kind of immigration, like at some point. Of course, there are some countries that experience it like in a higher level, like the U.S., Canada, some European countries. Um, and I think that in order, right, to create some kind of peace and social justice, you just need to create policies that welcome immigrants and policies that try to reintegrate them. And I think that, I mean, personally, I had been studying the U.S. Context and policy making process regarding immigration. And I think that we have had a lot of achievements, like in the last decade, right, in terms of welcoming immigrants, in terms of actually changing a lot of federal laws and federal policy making process, and also at the state level, like in terms of creating opportunities, right, and better conditions for immigrants and refugees. And I think that it has been great. Of course, we have had like a lot of setbacks, but right now, of course, I am very concerned about of immigrants and all these kind of political and social environment that is happening in the U.S. And I really think that it will be like a setback, no, un retroceso in terms of all the rights that we have accomplished for immigrants and refugees. And of course, it is going to result, right, in a lot of tension and in a lot of conflict and in a lot of this feeling that I think that it has to do with peace, a lot of not feeling welcoming, right? And how you make stronger institutions. Well, when we talk about institutions, there are like formal and informal institutions. We know that formal institutions are very influenced by the policy making process and by all the government guidance that, from my perspective, of course, right now is very hostile for immigrants and refugees and actually any like foreign person. But I think that we could like strengthen informal institutions, and I think that we could like, and actually it is what is happening, right, with a lot of non-government non-government organizations and international organizations and actually social movements, right, that are trying to defend and advocate for the immigrants' rights and refugees. So I think that even though the formal institutions could be very influenced by this political environment, right, and they of course have to follow these executive orders and federal like rule, I think that we could work a lot with these informal institutions and social groups from society, and actually the same immigrants groups to advocate, of course, for their rights or what they deserve.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. We
you
have
know that
a
it depends. I'm sorry, and you know that it depends also a lot of the state level. I mean, the U.S. is a very diverse country. It's a very each state, right, differs in how they implement the policies. So I'm sure that it is going to be a lot of nuances
mm,
across the U.S.
yeah. I mean, we have a long way to go, but I like that you highlighted that we are making good progress. Like for example, the Aarhus Convention increased access to information and public participation, and the COP16 Biodiversity Summit actually got indigenous environmental stewardship. While other groups actually increased youth empowerment and governance. So we are making good headway in in the SDG, and also in getting other groups, minority groups, the youth, indigenous groups involved in actually making a difference. I'd like to direct our attention to the UN's mission statement for this SDG, which is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. So we kind of broke that down into three primary topics: violence and conflict prevention. And then next, we want to discuss access to justice and legal protections. And lastly, institutional integrity and good governance. What do you think about our roadmap? Do you have any preliminary thoughts on the UN's mission statement? Do you think they're missing the mark on anything, or do you like the where it's headed?
Well, I think that is a very broad topic. I mean, really, when you want to achieve social justice, you need to create the conditions to favor the most disadvantaged people in society. Because sometimes we think that justice and social justice and equity and being inclusive is about to give the same kind of the I mean the same kind of things for everyone in society, and actually it is not. Actually, social justice is about to make that those people who are more disadvantaged, right, in society can have or can like possess, right, the same kind of conditions that other people in society have. And I think that is not an easy goal, right, to achieve, but I think that is possible. And I want, for instance, to provide like some examples. When you mention about this kind of social justice for institutions, I think that many institutions have made like a huge effort, for instance, for creating forms or this kind of legal access or public benefits access, like in a language, right, that is understandable for people who are not from the US. They are trying like to adjust some requirements and some kind of paperwork and some kind of requirements for people who were excluded before because they didn't meet that. So I think that in that order, when you really want to achieve social justice, what you have to do is try like to create the conditions so to adjust, right, the policy making process and institutions for those people who has been systematically excluded, right, in the system. And again, I feel that when you can get that, this level of violence, right, and this kind of conflict is going to be reduced, because I think that there are plenty of students, and actually the history has shown that when you have a more equitable society, right, the level of violence and conflict is going to be lower, for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah, go Isabel.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say, you were mentioning how the US is trying to, expand that justice. Do you think there are any international practices that could be implemented to, expand access to justice?
Well, Isabella, I think that right now the US is actually getting back, right, really to guarantee social justice and access. I mean, to be clear, just for instance, the last week, the president, right, signed an executive order saying that the English was like the only official language in the US, and it is really exclusive. It's like a way, I would say, a very informal way of excluding people, right, who don't speak English. Of course, international, right, people, immigrants, refugees, and I think that is, of course, a way of exclusion that I totally disagree. So, I mean, getting back to your point, I think that the US in the last decade made a lot of progress in terms of social justice, in terms of guaranteed, right, like a minimum of rights for immigrants and refugees and international people. But I think that right now we are getting back. And regarding your question about what international institutions could strengthen that, it is your question. I don't.
Yes, international practices that could expand the access for justice for other people or other countries?
Well, I think the United Nations have been doing like a great job. USIS has been doing a great job. The World Bank, the IDB, actually the OMG. I mean, I think that actually there are like several NGOs, no, who have been like working to guarantee like some minimal of rights, right, across the world. But also, I think that there are like some people and some advocates internationally, right, that are trying to advocate for people's rights, no, and to get like some kind of justice. So I will say that it's both these institutions, but also political and social leaders who have been involved in all this process.
Like yourself, I would consider you to be one of those social leaders who gets involved in the processes of change for justice. Uh, we do have some more to discuss in terms of getting into the specifics that I mentioned earlier. But before we do, I just have to ask real fast because I'm curious. How did you get started down this path of peace, justice, and strong institutions growing up in Colombia?
Okay, well, thank you, Shane, for your compliment. You're very gracious. Well, I hope really to be a social leader in that. Well, I grew up in Colombia, which is a very poor country, right, with a lot of inequities and with a lot of things. And I started my work in Bogota when I work with different, Bogota is divided in different counties. And I started working with mayors and trying like to design actually policies for the most disadvantaged population. So it was like a kind of way to get social justice, right? And actually, when you mentioned, or Isabella, I don't remember about this part of inclusion, right? And public participation. Actually, one of the most insightful and meaningful things that I did in Colombia was related to actually participatory budgets with community, where they were involved in all the policymaking process and actually the distribution of budget for their communities and their neighborhoods, etc. And when I came to the US, I had been focused, actually, I was focused on the higher education access for undocumented immigrants, for undocumented students. And it was part of my work, right, to kind of to explore the learning, compliance, and psychological costs that some people experience when they access public benefits. And after that, I have been working with several disadvantaged population. Right now, I'm working with former prisoners. I'm working with actually limited English proficiency people who are trying to access mental health. I am working with single mothers, no, with a lot of disadvantaged population right now in the US who just try not to access housing, public health, education, etc. So I would say that the sense of social justice no has been ingrained, I would say, in my work. I mean, in my academic and empirical work, and no, I'm working with actually with both with the scholars and practitioners.
Yeah, it's inspirational story, and I appreciate your sharing how you got your start. I want to get into a severe topic here that deserves discussion, which is violence and conflict prevention. According to the UN, nearly 70 million people have been displaced due to war, violence, and persecution. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about immigration and the importance of equitable access to it. Additionally, 1 in 7 children worldwide experience violence every year. What are the key drivers of violence and conflict in today's world? Because I feel like those numbers are kind of shocking. So I want to find out from you how you think, how does that come to be?
Well, I think that I think that really the factors that influence violence are multifaceticos, multifacer. No, I will say that of course there are some socioeconomic factors, and I think that of course poverty and inequality is a huge factor in violence. No, I think that I mean where the societies are more unequal, the level of violence is higher for sure. So I think that this kind of disparities in income, in wealth, in the opportunities, right, that people have to access to health and education are like a key drivers of violence for sure.
Yeah.
But there are other factors. There are also cultural factors, right? Some societies are more violent, right? Like for instance, Colombia has had a very long history of violence, and I would say that it is ingrained like in some kind of actually cultural perspectives and in some societies. But along with that, like I said before, I think that this socioeconomic disparity matters a lot in terms of violence. I mean, you have a society where a large part of the population cannot have access to education, to food, to housing, to health. Of course, it is going to be, to result like in a conflict, right? So I think that the most justice, right, the more equity we are able to achieve, of course, this level of violence is going to be lower. Also, when I mentioned these cultural factors, I feel that when you grow up in a very hostile environment, right, violent environment, it is something culturally that you are going to transmit in generation, right? This kind of resent and this kind of conflict, no, every day. And I can say in Colombia, for instance, some decades ago in Medellin, no, you read these stories about children, right, who were growing up in the middle, right, of shooting all the time, in the middle of guns. But of course, these people also didn't have access to education, to housing, to food. So I will say that it's a combination of many factors: poverty, income, the cultural environment, that you grow up. I will say that violence is not just the result of one single factor. It's a combination of several factors.
Yeah, I would definitely say like experiences definitely affect a person and make them do bad things that they will definitely regret later. But another thing I think is the leaders that we have or that are in governments that are running and making these rules are very important too, to make experiences for everyone to be, equal and positive so they don't cause violence and they like help with justice and peace. And I was just wondering if we have like more women in the table running like governments, will we have more peace? Do you think that if we have
Yes.
more women?
Yes.
Well, it is a great question. Well, it is a great question, and I didn't think about it like before. Well, I think that I cannot say that if you have more women, right, ruling a government or a society, we will have like more peace. I really think that it depends on the person, like you say, experiences, character, background, expertise, etc. I think that there are wonderful men, right, who had been working with communities, who had built their career, who are really passionate about peace, right? And try like to include communities in all the policy making decision process. And I think that women as well. No, I cannot say that women are going to be better than men or men are going to be better than women. For sure, I think that women need to have a more key role in the policy making process, and I think that women need to be heard more. And of course, we have been fighting for this kind of equal rights, right, between women and men, because for sure, of course, we still have a salaries gap, socioeconomic gaps, etc., between women and men. But I cannot say that because it is a woman, it is going to be a better ruler or a better governor. I think that it depends on the person. It depends on their experience, their skills, their abilities to communicate with people. I would say that their compassion, their sensitivity, like to people needs. But I can say that I totally agree with you. It depends on the people experience. I think that if there is a woman or if there like a group of women who had been involved in all these society like problems and working with communities, I'm sure that they are going like to be great leaders. No, like equal like men, but I will say that I don't have. I mean, I cannot assure that a woman is going to be better. Or if a woman is in government, we are going to have peace. No, in a higher level. I think that
You
is
said something that I'd like to expand on. You said in some areas there's going to be more violence and less equity. But can we change that? And how do we change that? In some parts of the world, there are oppressive regimes and human rights are completely neglected. So do we then have the right or the obligation even to step in and to stage interventions in order to preserve human rights in these high risk areas?
Yes, I mean for sure. I think that we need to work on that, and I think that the only way is to create spaces. Create like room for conversation, right, with this kind of countries leaders and with this kind of social movements. And yes, I mean for sure we need to fight for that. Yes, I mean absolutely, but what I think is that I don't know. I was thinking, for instance, in these countries where the woman, some women, right, are still neglecting like about their rights in education, their inclusion in societies, etc. And you just see their history, really what it has happened is that actually women who had been empowered in their own countries, right, and who have been traveling across the world, those women are who had been able like to raise their voices, right, and to get like a minimum rights at least. So I feel that is this kind of how we create the strategies to empower women across the world, right? And actually people know across the world, because you just see to me it's really insightful and meaningful when I see these women actually from, for instance, the Middle East countries, and they by themselves, right, raise their voices and try to fight about for some minimal rights, right? And they have been like across the world, right? These kind of advocates roles. So I think that yes, of course, it's important to empower women. It's important. I really believe that that many things in life, and especially in politics, is about conversations and create the spaces, to create like this kind of discussions with actually people who we disagree with. No, I think that is the most important.
And when we're having these conversations between different countries, which countries should we listen to the most on account of violence and suppressing outbreaks or actually preserving human rights? Which countries do you see that are doing this outstandingly that we should emulate?
Well, I think, Shane, that really I don't want like to name countries, because I don't want really to stereotype like a particular country. I think that all the countries have, in some way, right, different countries experience a different kind of violence, right? Some countries maybe are more violent in terms of gender rights, or in terms of income equality, right? Other countries, like for instance, Colombia has experienced a different like level of violence, right? or another level of exclusion. So really, I don't want like to stereotype countries. I will say that we need like to look at base by base, right, per country. I mean, some countries again have like more problems in terms of minority groups' rights. Other countries had more problems, like in terms of the distribution of income and wealth. And of course, all these create an environment of violence, across the world. So really, I cannot. I don't want like to name countries. Especially now, I think that I try to avoid a lot that. I am professor and I teach to several students across the world, from Europe, from the Middle East, from Asia, from Latin America. And from my experience, what I have realized is that not all the countries have their own issues. And I think that sometimes, badly, the social media, right, and in general the news, I think that portrays a very negative image, right, and perspective from particular countries, right? But when you know and when you meet these people, like in real life, you realize that it is not the case. So yes, I just try like to avoid to stereotype countries. Like for instance, I don't like that people stereotype Colombia. No, Colombia, drug dealers, a lot of terrorism, a lot of gangs groups. I think that many countries experience no different level of of violence and conflict.
I'm going to ask you a question as a student on that, because you're saying that like not to stereotype countries. It makes sense because different countries have their different challenges. But I would suggest, and let me know if there's any validity to what I'm saying here, because you're the professor, right? But I would say that countries like the Netherlands do well in biking, and therefore they're more eco-friendly and we can emulate them there. That countries like North Korea are very totalitarian, and that
Mhm.
they would be like somewhat objectively that they would struggle more with human rights. And so can we not to an extent take advice and take ideas from these other countries?
Well, I don't understand. I don't understand your question. If we could like create strategies or spaces for instance, for with North Korea.
Yeah, like couldn't we learn from them what not to do, or categorize them as objectively inferior in terms of human rights?
Oh yes,
Because
yes.
I'm just curious what your take is on that, because I want to fully understand your position.
Okay, changes. Now I get your question. Yes, I think that's for sure. We can learn from the experiences, right, from countries who had been violating the human rights, of course, from people, right? And of course we can also learn from, actually we don't go like very far from Venezuela, right, that has had like this dictatorship in the last year, right, and people had migrated and they had been displaced, right, to another like countries, especially Colombia and the US, etc. Cuba. Mhm. Afghanistan. I mean, yes, I think that we can learn from several countries, and I think that we could identify these experiences when they are violating freedom, right, and where they are no, or they are like imposing multiple barriers to allow people to access minimal. Yes, of course, we can learn from that. What I don't like is to stereotype, right? Because, for instance, some people think, oh, the US is the country of the freedom, right? And all the people have like equal rights and people have freedom. But I will say that there is also a kind of restriction and exclusion of basic rights, right? Maybe it is not like other countries are experiencing, but when you have like a very exclusive language, when you want to get rid of citizenship from some people, when you want like to exclude or to call aliens to international people, it is a way of violence, right? And we need to learn from that.
you were mentioning how, not every country has the same social spectrum. And I just want to take also this time to say today is March 8th, so happy Women's Day. Feliz Dia de la Mujer for, all of our viewers and listeners. And like you were saying, some countries, do stereotype, women because maybe they also don't think that they can maybe do the same thing men can do. So why do you think women have less access to justice in certain countries, and how can we change this?
Well, Isabel, I think that they can have like less access to justice. I think that mainly because they haven't had the opportunity to be educated. I think that it is a really main factor. And for instance, when you study, for instance, Latin countries, Central American countries, when you see the rate of enrollment between women and men, of course, women always present like a lower rate of employment in education, even from the elementary until, of course, higher education. So I think that education is a key factor in why they get less access. But I also think that there is a cultural factor. For instance, my background is in economics, and I was writing like a proposal. I just want like to give an example. And I realized through like a research that I did, for instance, how in Colombia, in Peru, in Venezuela, in some Latin countries, since a woman is in their early age, right? Even like in the elementary school, she is that like that she's not so, I mean, that she doesn't have the abilities, right? The capacity, the skills to learn math or to be involved like in history or in social justice discussion. So if you think about it, it's not just education, it's also this cultural environment that is teaching women that they are that they don't have the level, right, that a man has, that they should be, I don't know, learning about teaching or maybe be nurse, right? But they cannot be medical doctor, right? They cannot be economics. They cannot be engineering because they don't have like this math or social skills. Or, no, I don't know if I am clear. So I feel that is something ingrained in the education system and is involved. They don't access, right, like in the same level or in the same proportion like men to the education system. But I think that at the same time, there is this social construction about women being more apt, right, to study or to follow particular jobs or roles in society, right? Because they are mean to that. So, and men are mean to do other things. So I think that is both. I think that this lack of social justice is about the opportunities that they haven't had, but also this social construction about what is the role of a woman in society and what is the role of a man in society. And if we think about it, it is going to shape how you study, how you get involved in society. So, for instance, in my research, when I was conducting interviews with women in the high school, they told me I don't have the abilities, right, to learn math or to be an economist or an engineer because men are more suitable for that. Men are meant to be that. And if you think about it, it's a social construction that they have learned in their, I mean, with their families, but also in the school system. No, this wrong, of course, idea that they are not capable, no, that they don't have the skills to achieve that. So I think that we need like to work on this kind of narrative because I think that it's just a social construction of what a woman should be and what a man should be.
And you showed them, right? You ended up becoming a scholar of micro and
Oh, yes.
macroeconomics.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And believe me that even, well, I think that my parents were really supportive, but I remember when I was studying, I was in the middle of men. I think that from 30 people, just 3, 4 were women. And we always had, I remember these comments even from professors in the university saying, no, women just say like stupid things. If they get like a degree in economics, they are going to work on maybe in a bank, right? And to have like a beauty face. And what I mean, even these kind of jokes, no, that sometimes in society we take like acceptable. I mean, it gives like a message, right, to women. No, or women. I remember professors that say, "Oh, women are so bad in math, in statistics." But yes, you're right. I think that we need to break up these kind of stereotypes. I got from economics. I did my master. Of course, I hold a PhD. I have been very successful in publication, etc. And of course, women can do it, but I feel that there is a still this social construction about women and men, on how a woman is not complete in society, for instance, if she doesn't have a man, and no, I mean, all these kind of stereotypes, and of course, it influences a lot of justice.
Yeah. So this actually leads us to our second hurdle, which is access to justice and legal protections. And I mean, shockingly, 5 billion people worldwide lack meaningful access to justice. And like you were saying, our communities are also a big factor in that, because they're the ones that teach us, since from our childhood, what we can or can't do, and that kind of influences the rest of our lives. So what do you think, what are your thoughts on, schools teaching students about justice and fairness, and, what can individuals do to promote this in their communities?
Well, I think that is a great question. I don't know how the school system is teaching right now about justice. I have this experience from the US, at least. I have like 2 kids, and I'm really grateful how they had been learning, right, about to respect, right, other people's rights. I think that justice starts a lot with respect for other people who are different from us, right, to respect and to recognize that are people from other religions, from other backgrounds, from other countries, from other cultures, who are used to do the things in a way that maybe is not my way. And I think that in that sense, I think that the school systems, at least in the US, I don't know where, like in other places on the world, I think that has been doing like a great job in teaching students how this respect for the difference is important to get justice, and also teaching them about history, right? What has happened in the past with the civil rights, with, for instance, in the US, with all this segregation and discrimination between Black and white people. So I think that it's like a first step, right, to teach like our society how to access like to justice, right, and how to teach people what you need to respect others, beliefs and values and ways of doing things. I think that in that way, I think that this kind of, the school system institution has been, from my perspective, has been like playing like a key role in that way. And at least in the state that I move on, I'm very comfortable with that. In the higher education system, I think that it depends on the type of institution that you are enrolled, the state where you are. Again, I feel that, for instance, if you are located in those states that are more conservative in their values, instead, if you are located like in a state where the kind of the system or the social construction of the values are kind of more progressive, it is going to influence a lot how you perceive justice, how you access to justice, what you think about justice. So I would say that in higher education is kind of different in the US. From my perspective. And some institutions do like a great job. I think that some institutions are really strong in creating initiatives, in fomenting like the discussion and the dialogue, between students and professors and scholars, regarding social justice and human rights.
Yeah. With many different institutions in education, as you were saying, you're teaching people about justice. I think justice is very different in different places. But with many different nations having different laws and policies that are like implemented on the citizens. Is justice about humans having a moral compass? Is that what you think justice is about?
Human having what?
A moral compass?
More campus?
Yeah, do you know what that is? It's just basically moral rights, I would say.
It's like one of these things, but for your mind.
Yeah,
For
you're
your
learning something new today.
conscience, your soul. It's like having a conscience is basically what it means.
Okay, well, interesting. Sorry, I didn't know this kind of.
These
Okay,
idioms.
You learn something every day.
yes. So that the justice is guaranteed to people to have like more campus. It is your question.
Yes.
Well, I think that it is a great question because again, I think that every country and every society has a different perspective for justice. For instance, when I think about it, poverty, which is very tied to justice, right? If you are in a society where, let's say, everyone has a Toyota, let's say, right? And if you find, and you are happy, right, with the society, with everyone has a Toyota, right? And you think that you are guaranteeing like justice if everyone has a Toyota, right? If there is like a foreign person, right, who is coming to that society and that person has a BMW, right? uh so maybe your perspective of justice is going to start to change, right? Because this person, there is a person in society who is having like a different car, right, that the other people don't have. So maybe you start to question, well, what is justice in that way, that now all the people have like a BMW, or is justice about that everyone has a car that they can like move with, right? And of course, I am more inclinated for the second perspective, right? I think that if you guarantee that all the people, I think that it is impossible to give to everyone the same thing. I mean, it's impossible because, of course, each person works in a different level, because each person has a different background, a different level of education, etc. So to me, this perspective of justice, like guarantee like the same things for everyone, is wrong. But I think that justice is about to guarantee and to provide to all the members in a society like a minimum from what they can like to succeed, right? If I guarantee that everyone has like a minimum level, right, of conditions or resources, right, to succeed, I think that I am guaranteeing like justice. But yes, I will say that, I mean, each society has a different perspective. It depends again on several factors, socioeconomic factors, cultural factors. Maybe for some societies justice is about guarantee like a minimum of let's say social interaction, right? And for other societies justice is more about guarantee like a minimum of resources, right? Some societies value more this kind of social cohesion, right, and community involvement. And it is justice for other societies is more about resources and creating wealth and creating income. So I will say that if you just guarantee the conditions that for that all people can access to this minimal of resources, and all people have like this minimal of I would say yes, like access to these minimum conditions and resources, I think that you guarantee like justice in some way.
Yeah, and I think everyone's perspective on justice is definitely different because not everyone thinks the same thing, and I think some of our current leaders don't always, agree on maybe like their community's thoughts, so everyone has their own opinion. And I think, overall in the future, this new generation is, the generation that's gonna like rule the world. We're like the future. So how do you think young people can help create a more equal and just society for everyone,
Well, I think that young people need to recognize the difference in our society. I think that really it is crucial when you want to achieve justice. You need to recognize that there are people who are different, who are from different backgrounds, persons who have a different ethnicity, race, who have had a different level of income, who have disabilities, who have identity genders. I mean, I think that recognizing these difference is crucial to achieve justice. And I think that after that of recognizing is to respect that. And I will say, I mean, from my experience, I feel that when you interact more with people who are different from you, uh, I think that you get more kind of agreement and this kind of social cohesion that to me is very important to guarantee justice. I think that it's very hard when I talk about justice, but I don't interact with that person who is different from me. But when I get involved and when I get engaged with people who don't share my values and my beliefs, I feel that I become a more tolerant person, a more compassionate person, which I think that is crucial for justice, because in the future, when regardless of the role that I am doing in society, right, I have this perception in my brain, right, in my mind, that there are people with different needs, right, that I don't have it. I feel that I am going to be more tolerant, and I am going to guarantee like some minimums, because in my previous experience, I had been interacting with people who are different from me. So I will say that for young people, recognizing respect, and engage, right, with people who are not part of your circle, I think that is going to guarantee a little of justice in society. Because sometimes when we think about justice, we are always thinking about, well, how the big institution, the strong institution, the federal, the government institution are going to guarantee justice. But I think that if you don't start to be this kind of justice and trust, like in society, in the communities, it is going to be very hard to get at the macro level. If you don't start with this kind of, like we said, like in the school community system, in your neighborhood, in the churches, right? I mean, in this kind of social movement that you attend, I think that if you start with that, it is going to be represented at the macro level.
This topic actually goes into our third hurdle, which is institutional integrity and good governance. Our current world definitely has to adapt to different views. And, according to the Transparency International, corruption it includes a big number. Okay, what do you think the corruption cost of the global economy?
Oh my God!
I would say
The Transparency International, it investigates corruption across the globe, and they came up with a number that we would have this much more money in US dollars to spend on initiatives that benefit people, that advance the SDGs, for example, if there wasn't corruption. How much do you think we would save without corruption?
Well, I don't have like a number here, right? I haven't done this kind of estimation numerically, economically, but of course, I can talk about like in terms of social terms. Of course,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just wanted to kind of make a game out of this because it is a very big, scary, sad number, but it's also laughably big. Isabella, do you want to announce it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's actually
it's bad.
Yes, it's actually very bad. It's 2.6 trillion annually.
Every single year.
Every year.
Well, and you see, I think that one of the worst consequences of corruption is actually inequality, because the problem is that when you have corruption, you are excluding people, right, from some rights. I mean, the problem with corruption is that, for instance, you favor, right, a particular people in society to do that, or a particular economic groups, right, to perform like a contract, let's say, or you favor that some people pay less taxes, right? I mean, there are many ways, right, of corruption, right? Bribery, this kind of giving wrong incentives, right, to the wrong groups, etc. But in the end, what you are doing is that this distribution of income, right, and resources is unfair. I mean, really, the worst consequence of corruption is this perversive distribution of resources. So, of course, if corruption doesn't take place, right, there will be more resources to guarantee education, public health, labor market opportunities, job training, building more schools, building more houses for people. I mean, the problem with corruption is that, right, the distribution of income is going to be unfair across society. That some social groups who could benefit, right, from more public expenditure, for instance, for more public spending in them, are going like to experience like a lower level of that because of corruption, right? But also corruption is about if I benefit my friend, right, to be in a position, even though that person doesn't meet the qualification, right, the requirements to do that. So just this simple corruption practice is going to exclude like a person who meets the requirement, right? Who has the qualification to perform that job. And of course, in that way, I am creating inequity, right, in society. I mean, I am putting the wrong people and I am excluding the right people, right, who could like perform like a better role. So not just in terms of appointments, but you think at the macro level is the same with resources. And actually, again, Colombia is a good example of that.
Yeah, like you were saying, I think exclusion is a big problem, in today's world. And I think, maybe some countries are doing it, unconsciously, where they're like, oh, you know what, if I have a good partnership with this country, it will benefit both of us. But, they don't think of those countries who don't really have those opportunities because maybe they don't have, a lot to give, but they could certainly use help from others. How do you think we can convey that message to other countries that we shouldn't, exclude one another, but instead we should be like, help one another and just be like a big global community?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, Isabella, it is a great question, and I would say that it's very idealistic in some way, because I think that one of the biggest tension in our society is this tension between equity and efficiency, or justice and efficiency. And I feel that both values are kind of, I mean, one value excludes the other one, right? If you want a more efficient society, you are going to create partnership with the best, right, in society, with the best countries, with the best partners, with the best companies, right? Because your values about creating or developing efficiency, right? Productivity, creating like wealth, income, and you can like, be efficient but being very unequal and very unjust. No, this is the problem. So I think that your point is great. Of course, I think that all the countries are trying to benefit, to maximize, right, their GDP. They are trying to maximize their trade. They are trying to maximize the income for the population. So, and in that order, they need to create the right partnership, right, with the best one in the world. And I think that it has happened, right, in our society. So I will say that you need to create this kind of partnership where, I mean, the countries can benefit economically, but also socially. And I think that you need maybe to demonstrate that how like this kind of big country, right, or very strong country, for instance, the US like could benefit from with agreements with other countries that are not so developed, right, and maybe these undeveloping countries, right, that don't have like the same kind of economic level, etc., could benefit the US socially, right, could benefit the US culturally. So I think that the point is is to divert our focus or just like an economic point of view, right? Just about efficiency, just about productivity, economically speaking. I think that is trying to bring to the table other values, no peace, social cohesion, justice, human rights. So I think that is a great point, because I think that right now in our society, what matters is efficiency, is productivity, is creating income, no, is having more and more. So but I think that these topics about social justice, climate change, right, protection of environment, of human rights are not really into the table. But I'm sure that those countries or societies that are not so well developed can contribute a lot and to bring to the table a lot of things.
Yeah, well, we just wanted to know thank you for joining us today
Yes.
in Voices of Impact. You were an amazing guest. We are so honored that you joined us today. And for our listeners, who wish to follow your work because you're very inspirational, where can they find you?
Where can I find me? Where you
How
can
can they
find me?
contact you? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I work at Virginia Tech. You can find me in the Institute for Policy and Governance. And I can give you my email, no, either if someone is interested. Well, my email is B Andrea M at bt.edu.
Thank you for coming on, Gilbert, and we'll be back next week with more, because our World Council of Youth has directed us to cover affordable and clean energy next. Thank you for listening to Voices of Impact.
Voices of Impact.
We hope you enjoyed the Voices of Impact podcast, where we engage in spirited discourse on the world's most pressing issues with the goal to discover and implement solutions.
Our mission is to overcome global and societal conundrums through student unification, accepting our roles as future stewards of planet Earth. Please consider sharing this episode with other humans to enable spirited youth discourse on the planet's most pressing issues.
If you learned something or felt empowered by this episode, tune in Saturdays for more student-led change-making conversations, and be sure to follow, share, and positively rate our show.
Voices of Impact is brought to you by the University of San Diego's Jacobs Institute for Innovation in Education, PPC Profit Pros, and SchoolCAST, a Cloudcast Media program to empower the voices of young students around the world.